my name is Lynn and I'm studying to become a BCBA. In today's video, we are going into Unit 8, almost at the end of this semester. So Unit 8 discusses motivating operations and multiple functions of stimuli. So it's going to be a pretty quick one because we discussed a lot of motivating operations in our previous video of Unit 7, which goes over all the possible ways you can find them. Motivating operations and multiple functions of stimuli have a direct relationship with each other. So conditioned motivating operations of reinforcement, or CMOs, and unlearned motivating operations, or UMOs, are both motivating operations that have behavior altering effects that are learned. The consequences of both are learned, but the motivating operation, the establishing or abolishing operation thereof, can be learned or unlearned. So that's why you have the conditioned versus unlearned. We already went through the 9 basic human UMOs in Unit 7, but for the most part, just remember anything your body needs that you didn't have to learn in order to want it. That being said, there are 3 main CMOs, or conditioned motivating operations, that this unit covers. While more exist, these are the 3 established ones that this unit covers. The first one is a surrogate CMO. It's very similar to classical conditioning, where the motivating operation will produce the same effect as another motivating operation due to classical training, essentially, due to pairing. So for instance, if you click a clicker, right, and you give a person a cookie, and then you keep doing that, and so it provides a learning history, right, that when they hear the clicker they should expect a cookie. That clicker has now become a surrogate. So that's a surrogate conditioned CMO. So for instance, I believe one of the examples that they used was there's a person who always had a margarita when they were at the club listening to salsa music, but then as they went to in later parts of life, when they were going and they heard salsa music, they suddenly craved a margarita. And it was only when they heard salsa music that they craved a margarita, because they had paired listening to salsa music at the club and drinking margaritas so heavily. So that's a surrogate CMO. That's a conditioned motivating operation. Suddenly they're gonna be like, oh, I kind of feel like a margarita. Very similar with popcorn in the movies. Every time you go, it's no mistake that they make sure that you can smell the popcorn, right? But a lot of people have paired going to the movies and popcorn. So sometimes if you think about oh, I want to watch a movie even at home, you'll think, okay, maybe I should eat some popcorn with that. It's not really a natural thing to think about, but that is something that we've established. So that's a surrogate CMO. The second CMO that they cover is reflexive CMO. And there are 2 types of reflexive CMOs. There is threat CMO, which describes something will worsen, or promise CMO, which promises that something will improve. Its own termination, so the CMO is that stimuli. The own termination of that stimuli is a form of relief. It is reinforcing, so to speak. It will cause you to do something or respond in some manner. For instance, let's say that you jump in your car, you turn on your car, turn the key, start driving. You forgot to put on your seatbelt. Well, what do most cars do nowadays if you aren't wearing your seatbelt? Even if you're not the driver, but even the passenger side. It starts to beep a little bit, right? But then you still don't put on your seatbelt. It starts beeping louder or more persistently. Or sometimes it just turns into a tone, like a loud, annoying tone. Suddenly you're fine, okay, I'll put on the seatbelt. Well, you're putting on the seatbelt to get rid of that beep, right? We've established a reinforcement of a negative reinforcement, right? We're taking something away. But that's a reflexive CMO, because the initial beeping is threatening. It's a threat CMO that it's going to get worse. So just understand that reflexive CMO describes either something can get better or something can get worse. And usually the termination of that stimuli presented is a form of its own relief. It is reinforcing. The last CMO that this unit covers is transitive CMO, which means that one item gains value because of a desire to do something else. That is to say, the value of a second stimulus is directly influenced by an antecedent stimulus. For instance, when you need to go to your car keys are hanging by the door. Well, let's say you need to go to the bathroom. Are you going to reach for your car keys? Probably not, because you don't need to use the car keys to go use the restroom. But suddenly you're like, oh gosh, I have to go outside. Where are my keys? Well, what does going outside have anything to do with your keys? Well, it's kind of a chained thing. We've established that we need the car key to open the car, to drive the car. So the key's value is suddenly really increased when you have to drive the car. The key is not the car, but it is directly influenced by the value of driving a car. So it's a transitive value. So it's a transitive CMO. These three CMOs were pretty, in my opinion, easy to understand because surrogate is just classical conditioning, right? Which is not the same as transitive, because the clicker doesn't mean that there's a treat. The clicker means, oh, you're used to a treat being there. Versus keys, the car key can change. Your car can change. You've not directly paired this black key has to go with this one. When you see that particular key, you're not thinking exactly of your car, right? You're just like, oh, that's a car key. So it's not paired, it's transitive. The value of it increases as you need one stimulus. It directly increases the value of another stimulus. And the other one that we covered, which was, I don't want to say confusing, but a little bit more nuanced, was the reflexive CMO, which means, either something will improve or something will worsen, depending on how you respond to the actual stimuli itself. So those are the three main CMOs that they'll test you on for sure. The next part of the chapter talks about behavior chains, which basically describes it is a sequence-specific order to gain a terminal reinforcer. Pretty much a chain of events and something that you learn. So for instance, how to brush your teeth. You first have to grab the toothpaste, then you have to grab the toothbrush, or either one. But you have to put toothpaste on the toothbrush. You can't do that at the very end, right? It's a very specific sequence of things. That being said, the next part that they cover, behavior chains are basically its own thing, right? Its own chapter. The next chapter discusses response class hierarchy. That is to say, reinforcers provided from any response are independent of each other. So reinforcements can have a higher preference. Some reinforcements can have a higher preference than another, right? A hierarchy. A kid may like their iPad tablet far more than they like their ball, which they like far more than their stuffed teddy bear. So these response class hierarchies show you that the reinforcements can be used in that manner, right? So you understand which one comes more preferred to less preferred, and thus changing and altering the value of the consequence. Not to say that the kid won't want the teddy bear, the ball, or the iPad at any given moment, right? But it depends on what's available and how much they like something. The last part of the chapter discusses two omnibus terms for the multiple effective stimuli, which are basically just two camps. There is aversive stimuli and appetitive stimuli. Aversive stimuli is anything that we don't like or don't want. And an appetitive stimuli are things that we do like or do want. That's the most basic form of it. The reason why they're discussed or described as omnibus terms is because they're kind of both umbrella terms that describe multiple things. So they're used to describe stimuli in different contingencies, in different situations. But basically, instead of saying kid ran away from barking dog, you can say client ran away from aversive stimuli, right? Because a barking dog is not necessarily going to be appetitive. It's not going to be something that they desired. Versus if another kid runs towards the dog that's barking, you can say client ran towards appetitive stimuli, technically speaking, right? Something that they are clearly wanting. So it's more or less purely subjective on that end. That covers all of Unit 8. And like I said, pretty quick, just covers the three main CMOs that they teach. Once again, there are more CMOs than just surrogate, reflexive, and transitive, but those are the ones that they will test you on. So I hope that you found this video to be informational, and I will see you in the next one.